Hey everyone, because Morels are out right now, I thought it would be a great week to go over a few different points on Verpa bohemica, Verpa mushrooms, because they're one of the most common Morel lookalikes. First, a couple thank yous. Big thank you to mycologist Michael Beug. I hope I didn't butcher the pronunciation of your name too bad there. Thanks for letting me use some of your images of undescribed Verpas in my blog post. Thanks to Mushroom Marauder. Thanks to Adam McRae for sharing some other images that I was able to make the infographic you'll see with. What we'll talk about regarding Verpas is the following. How to ID them versus Morels and half-free Morels. Are Verpas edible? Do Verpas contain Hydrazine? Then we're going to make a little dried Verpa soup and have a quick taste test. Here we go. How to ID Verpas. Verpas are very similar to Morels and half-free Morels. They're really easy to tell apart with these different points. Verpas are always going to have a cottony pith on the inside when you cut the mushrooms in half. Half-free Morels are hollow because they're a true Morel, and common Morels, all the different Morkellas, also are hollow on the inside. Verpa caps are attached to the stalk or the stipe, the stem, at the top, and it kind of is like if you put a thimble on top of a pencil eraser. Half-free Morels are connected at a halfway point of the cap to the stipe. And with regular Morels, the cap is completely connected to the stalk and there's nothing that hangs off. Okay, easy. Are Verpas edible? Verpas are edible for some people. These mushrooms have a long history of being eaten in Europe, especially in France and Italy, and what should be the Czech Republic now. I actually had someone send me a beautiful picture of a basket of fresh Verpas from this year from the Czech Republic, which is where they're first found, which is why the French name is Verpa de Boheme. So these mushrooms have been eaten for a very long time over there, and they've also been sold commercially in the United States. But they can make you sick a number of different ways. Their toxicology is basically the same as Morels. So if you eat too many Verpas, overconsumption, if you eat too many mushrooms, I would be careful eating more than 2 to 4 ounces in a sitting. If you eat a whole bunch, you can get sick. If you eat a whole bunch of Morels, you can get sick too. One of the more interesting ways that Verpas can make you sick is an alcohol allergy. And this is not specific just to Verpas. The first mushroom event I ever did, it was a black Morel event, and the Morel that we were picking, which should be Morchella septentrionalis, found in northern Minnesota, I would say like 20% of the people at the event, after they ate a couple little fried Morels and started drinking, there's a whole bunch of people vomiting their brains out. So that is a specific, individual alcohol intolerance that seems to be relatively common, and that can happen with Verpas too, but also with Morels. The other way that Verpas can make you sick is if you just have a generalized Verpa intolerance. A mushroom intolerance or an allergy is something that you can develop over time, or you can just be born with it. And we see the exact same things with Morels and many other mushrooms. Some people just can't eat them. So the problem is that it seems like a lot more people have an allergy, a natural allergy or intolerance to Verpas than Morels. Even though Verpas have been sold commercially in the United States, I do not think these mushrooms are ready for prime time to be sold and cooked in restaurants in North America, at least just yet. And the reason is because we still have basically a fungophobic society. And if people get sick from mushrooms, it portrays the mushroom community in kind of a bad light. It's not very good optics. People just aren't used to mushrooms, wild mushrooms, eating, hunting, selling, buying, and all of the things around wild mushrooms in the United States and North America as they are in Europe. It's just more acceptable. It's more normal. And also, if you don't know, just to make sure that I drive this point home, all of these mushrooms need to be thoroughly cooked, and if they are not thoroughly cooked, they could make you very sick, or as you'll see with the Dave Sushi example, even worse. always cook these mushrooms thoroughly. Do verpas contain hydrazine? We don't know for sure if verpas contain hydrazine or not. As far as I know, there haven't been any studies done on that. But what I do know, when I have a lack of scientific data to cite, one of the things that I like to mention is the natural study or something to that extent. I'll say, well, think about the study. The study being the ethnomycological history of the mushroom, or the history of how the mushroom has been used as a food by humans, because that we have a good amount of stuff to cite. So verpas are eaten in Italy, they're eaten in France, they're eaten in Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, and morels can cause problems too. Case in point, Dave's Sushi last year in 2023, when 2 people died and like 50 people got sick from having semi-cooked or semi-raw morels with sushi. Another thing I think it's important to consider is that consumption of verpa mushrooms in North America has to be very underreported. And the reason being, people can't tell the difference between the mushrooms. And every year, verpas are sold in farmers markets in small amounts in baskets of morels because people can't tell the difference. And they eat them along with morels. In conclusion, verpas are an edible mushroom if you're not allergic to them. As a chef, I probably won't be serving them to the general public in a place where they are not very culturally accepted. Not just yet. If I was a chef in Europe, I would absolutely serve verpas every spring because I would know the guy down the street is probably serving verpa soup on his menu too. So if someone got sick, they would say, oh, I probably am just allergic to this, and they would not blame the chef or the restaurant. In North America, in the United States, I think there's a much bigger chance that a restaurant could get singled out or a chef could get singled out if they served a mushroom that someone was allergic to, and it could cause problems for them and, possibly harm their reputation. I think more mushroom poisonings are going to happen in the future. It's just something to keep in mind. At home, I think it's totally fine to eat this mushroom and enjoy it, and I'll definitely pick them when I see them if the morels are scarce. Verpas are also super brittle and they break apart in the basket, and if you put morels on top of them, you're just going to come home with a big bag full of crumbles. But I think it's fine to eat these mushrooms. It's fine to enjoy them by yourself. Just don't eat a ton of them, and maybe don't serve them to your entire family in a large amount. Start with small amounts, like 1 to 2 ounces per person. Wait 12 hours, and then after that, you could increase your portion size a little bit. Now let's make a little dried verpa soup. This is just my favorite dried morel soup, and I'm just substituting verpas, but I had to substitute about twice the amount of verpas as I use compared to dried morels because verpas are much milder. We just soak the mushrooms, and then we cook a little bit of leek, celery, onion. We add a little bit of rice to thicken it. And you can use lots of dried mushrooms here. You can use dried Gyromitra too if you have some like Gyromitra corfii, Gyromitra caroliniana. Put everything in a blender after it's cooked. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Puree it all up until it's nice and velvety. And this is one of my favorite ways to have dried morels or their friends. Put a couple sauteed verpa caps on top, a few chives. A little taste test. This is just some of the verpa soup that I made, and I had to add like almost twice the amount of mushrooms to get it to taste comparable to my morel soup. I just took a recipe from morel soup that I have, one of my favorites, and I just substituted dried verpas. And another thing to talk about with dried verpas is that I think it's much more likely that you will not have any kind of reaction if you have them dried than if you have them fresh. Drying is just a really great way to make mushrooms safe. But here goes. It's good and mushroomy. It's good. It's very good. It's mushroomy. Verpas taste like morels. You can kind of think of them and half-free morels almost like being diet morels. But they're good. Thanks for watching, guys.